let's get back to the Chumash. So, so Yosef is specifically connected to his father. That's what Rashi is trying to tell us now, for a number of reasons. He says, first of all, why did Yaakov even move to marry into the family? There was to marry Rachel, right? Was to marry Rachel. So Yosef ends up becoming his main child in a way, because that's the whole reason he even moved to Haran, and ended up marrying the child there. That's number one. Number two, they actually, Rashi tells us that they looked similar, that Yaakov and Yosef actually looked very similar to each other. So their appearance was the same. Another interesting thing Rashi tells us, their life events were very similar to each other. What happened to one happened to the other one. What everybody hated, right? His brothers, Esav hated Yaakov. Esav wanted to kill Yaakov. Yosef's brothers hated him. They wanted to kill him. And there's a lot of similarities. So Yosef ends up becoming kind of the main son of Yaakov. And finally, Rashi tells us very interesting that it says Yaakov settled down in Israel, in Canaan, by his father in Hebron. Rashi says Yaakov finally said, I had enough. I just want a life of being relaxed. I dealt with Esav and I dealt with Lavan, and all I've been my whole life is traveling and running. All I want now in life, like I said, I want to retire in peace. I just want now to live with my family in peace. And Yosef has the whole issue sold by his brothers, right? All of a sudden, all he wants to is sit in peace. So Hashem says, Rashi says that God tells the tzaddikim, he says, look, in the afterlife, you're going to have tremendous reward. Now you got to work. Your reward is the world to come. Don't expect peace and tranquility in this world and in the next world. Right now, God expects and demands of the righteous people that they need to work and they need to put in the time and the effort in this lifetime, and not to expect to have tranquility in this world. So very interesting Rashi that people quote a lot. Hashem challenges the tzaddik in this world, makes him work hard in order to give him a reward in the world to come. And you want to sleep, you want to have relaxed vacations in the world to come, not in this world, especially to the tzaddik. He's going to have to struggle and work hard in this world. Now, a few more very interesting Rashis on this verse. We said Yosef was acting childish. Rashi says he was acting childish. From this teenager, he was all into his hair, and he was touching up his eyes, and this wasn't like a adult boy, the way he was acting. Yosef was into his looks, very into his looks, perhaps more than a manly teenager would be at that time. So that's another interesting thing about Yosef. Another fascinating thing Rashi tells us about what was going on there. Yosef was friends with the maidservants' sons, those brothers, and Rashi tells us why. Why does it say that Yosef was specifically friends with them? And he says because the other brothers, Leah's children, would make fun, would look down upon the brothers of the maidservants. They would say, like, you're just children of the maidservants. You're actually our servants, I guess, in a way, right? Because if your mother's a servant of our dad, then you're a servant of our dad too. And they basically looked at their brothers at second tier, and Yosef would make them close, would comfort them. Yosef was a nice brother who would take care of their brothers that the other brothers would bash. Finally, this is a very important Rashi over here to understand the rest of the story. He said at the end of the verse that Yosef would bring negative talk to his father. The Torah doesn't tell us what. Rashi is going to tell us there were specifically 3 things that Yosef would tattle on his brothers to his father. There were specifically 3 things that Yosef would tattle on his brothers to his father. What are those 3 things that Yosef would tattle on his brothers? First of all, he said that they were violating one of the 7 Noahide laws, the commandments that even Gentiles took upon themselves at their time. And that is that to be kind to animals, specifically that if you want to eat an animal, you first have to kill the animal. The animal has to die. You cannot eat a limb of an animal until it dies. You first have to kill it. Once it's dead, you could then eat it like a lion, God forbid, or you see like a lion will eat an animal even before it dies. So out of kindness to animals, not to act cruel, they said you must first kill the animal, wait till it dies. Only once the animal's dead could you then eat it. Yosef would go and tell his father that he saw his brothers violating this prohibition, that they were eating a limb off the animal. That's number one. Number two, he would also say that the brothers were calling the maidservants' brothers servants. They would call them servants. And the brothers were in violation of such a terrible thing, because that means that Jacob married maidservants, concubines, whatever you call them, and that these boys are servants, and the brothers were being very disrespectful to Yaakov by describing Yaakov in such a sense that he married servants and maidservants, and the children were servants. That was the second crime that Yosef did, that Yosef said that his brothers were doing. And third of all, the third thing is that they were suspect to adultery, that they were suspect to having relations with women out of wedlock, and Yosef would go to his father and tell them these three things. So that's what Yosef would tell his father about his brothers. Rashi tells us Yosef got punished. The punishment will fit his crime because all three things were not true. Number one, and I'm going to explain to you what one of the commentaries said, when Yosef saw the brothers eating a limb off an animal, what happened was they had slaughtered the animal, but they started eating before the animal was dead, which is not a violation, which means once the animal, I guess they didn't wait for the animal to finish jumping, whatever an animal does after it's killed. They ate it right away. So it wasn't true. They were not really in violation of eating a limb off a living animal, because once it's slaughtered, even before it's fully stops moving, it's not considered a violation of that law. So it wasn't true. Number two, the commentary I read said that Yosef said that his brothers were calling the other brothers maidservants. They were not saying that the boys were servants. They were saying their mothers were maidservants, which not full kind of servants, but partial kind of servants. It wasn't fully true. The way he was telling his father what his brothers did, it wasn't fully true what they were saying. They were never calling the other boys servants. It wasn't true. Yosef was saying the story wrong. And third of all, Yosef says that he was suspect of adultery because they were doing business with women, selling, I think he said, milk and maybe eggs or meat or something to the local women in town, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. Yosef was making up a story that they were suspect of things that they weren't really prohibited to do. Because of that, Rashi tells us that he got punished. His punishment wasn't the three things that he was lying, saying not true about his brothers. Number one, when Yosef will get brothers, what will the brothers do? They'll kill a goat, and they will stick Yosef's clothes in a goat and bring his clothes to his father to say, look, Yosef was eaten by an animal and died, and look at the blood, because the blood of a goat looks like the blood of a person. So they're going to kill a goat in order to pretend that Yosef got killed by an animal. That is a punishment in return. His punishment was for saying they were eating a limb of a living animal. An animal was killed in order to sell Yosef. Number two, the fact that he would say they would call him slaves. Yosef himself got sold as a slave. And third of all, on the fact that he says that they were suspect to adultery, to prohibited relations, Yosef's wife is going to have a challenge. Yosef's master's wife is going to have a challenge, and it's going to try to seduce Yosef. So Yosef's going to be punished. The punishment will fit the crime of everything taking place. But it's a very fascinating Rashi, right? Really getting into the details here is, we see what did the Torah say that Yosef would bring the negative reports to his father, and Rashi's telling us there were three things. Again, the three things are, number one, he said that their brothers were eating a limb of an animal, which was prohibited. Number two, he would say that the brothers of Leah, the sons of Leah, were making fun of the sons of the maidservants, calling them servants. And third of all, he told his father that his brothers were selling and doing business in a way that was suspect to prohibited marriage relations. And he brings these words to his father, Dibasam, which means he spoke a lot. Anything that he could find to speak evil, Rashi tells us he would speak evil about his brothers. So here's laying down the story and why. Now you know why Yosef's brothers hated him so much. That's what I'm saying. This is the beginning of the story here, and it's so important to know and understand the sequence of things that takes place. Let's continue. Yisrael loves Yosef. However, Yisrael loved Yosef, Mikol Banav, from all his sons. And the Torah tells us why. Ki ben zekunim hu loy. Because he was a son in old age. So Rashi tells us a few ways. Number one is he had him when he was an old man already. He was pretty old, Yaakov, at that time when Yosef was born. Yosef was second to last son. The Onkelos, the Aramaic translation on the Torah, tells us that it doesn't mean zekunim means because he was old. It means zikna is someone who is chachma, is someone who is smart. That Yosef was a very smart son, it seems, and the father felt very close to him, and he taught his son everything. Remember, he was in yeshiva of Shem and Aber for 14 years. He taught his son Yosef everything that he learned. He felt very close, and his son picked up Torah really well. So he had a special bond with Yosef because he was able to teach Torah to him, I guess, more even than the rest of his sons. And Rashi says the third reason is that Yosef looked very similar to his father Yaakov. His simply physical resemblance of Yosef was to Yaakov. And for all these reasons, again, three reasons. Number one, he had him when he was old. Number two, he was very smart, and he felt that Yosef understood the Torah uniquely more than his brothers very, very well. And finally, he looked similar to his father, and Yisrael had a special liking to him. And therefore, also like Sainas Pasim, the Torah tells us, he made him a fine wool coat. So Pasim means milas, it means a fine kind of wool. So he made him this very special, beautiful coat in order for his son. A very interesting medrash I'll share on this word pasim, because pasim is like a funny word. What does pasim mean? If you look if you're able to read the Hebrew here in verse 3, those in our classic read Hebrew, will notice the last word on verse 3 is pasim, is the letters pei, samach, yud, and mem. And those four letters stand for the four challenges that Yosef is about to encounter. Very interesting, because pei stands for Potiphar. Potiphar is the name of the master, where Yosef is going to be sold as a slave to a man called Potiphar. So hidden in this word is the four problems going to encounter. Number one is Potiphar. Samach stands for Seichrim. He's going to be sold to merchants. Is how he's going to be sold from one merchant to the next. Yishmaelim, the Yud stands for Yishmaelim, which means the Ishmaelites, which is who he's going to be sold to. And finally, the Men stands for the Minyanim, also the kind of merchants who's going to be sold to. So encoded in this word of Pasim is a code of the future troubles that's going to face Yosef, that is going to lead up. A very interesting medrash that the Rashi brings out. So what happens now? So we see all about Yosef. Yosef is telling the bad things to his father about his brother, and they see that his father loves Yosef more than the rest of them. In verse 4, his brothers see that their father loved him, more than the rest of the brothers. And they hated him. They could not speak in peace with him. They saw their brother and they hated him. And they hated him so much that they couldn't act as his friend. Now, is that a negative or positive? Very interesting. Rashi says that is actually, from the negative, you actually see the positive, because they were honest people, they were truthful people, and then when they hated Yosef, when they were very upset at Yosef, they couldn't bring themselves to pretend and be all lovey-dovey with him, because they were honest, straightforward people. So, it's not like the kind of person that's a faker. Maybe some people call it some kind of politicians today, who could say one thing and then mean something else and then flip over in a minute. But they were very honest people, and they hated Yosef, but that was a positive thing, that they couldn't make lovey-dovey and pretend. They couldn't speak to him, as I mentioned. You had these children being raised and growing up and having these unhealthy, kind of relationship between the brothers because of what's going on. And now, to add insult to injury, this is already all taking place. Yosef is telling his father a bunch of bad things that are not true about his brothers. And his father loving Yosef more and making him this special coat. And what happens? And now it's going to add insult to injury. Yosef dreams a dream. And he tells the dream to his brothers. And because of this dream, or two dreams, they hate Yosef even more. In verse 6, and he tells them, he says, listen to this dream, my brothers. I guess that already hate him. Listen to this dream I dreamt. And behold, we are bundling bundles. We're collecting what they would do in the farm, right? In those days, they would go to the wheat and collect bundles and wrap them up. So we're all in the field, the brothers, and we're collecting bundles of wheat. In the field, and my wheat stalk, that's representing me, stands up. And your wheat stalks surround mine. And the wheat stalks that are representing you guys bow down to my wheat stalk that's standing in the middle. So mine is standing up big and strong, and remaining standing strong in its place, and your bundles are bowing down to my bundles. So when the brothers hear this dream, verse 8, and the brothers say, what? You want to be king over us? You want to reign over us? What? You want to be You want to do that to us? You think you're going to rule over us? They hate him even more on his dreams and his words. So on all the bad things that they're first of all telling his father about them. Now he's telling them how he wants to rule over them. And then he has a second dream, verse 10. He dreams another dream, and he tells it to his brothers. He says, you know what dream? I just dreamt another dream. I dreamt another dream. The sun and the moon in my dream this time. The 11 stars are bowing to me. I had a dream last night. Guess what I dreamt? I'm in the middle. You got 11 stars, the sun and the moon, and they're all bowing down to me. Right? I guess imagine if your brother, someone came to you one time and said that you were bowing down to him. And after he told his brothers, he goes and tells his father, his father and brothers are there in the same room together, and he's relating to his father this dream. He just told his brothers. Vayigar by Aviv. And his father rebuked him. Stop it, Yosef, he said. His father says, what kind of silly dreams are you telling us about? What, you think me and your mom, who had already passed away, she's died already, she's not even alive anymore. She passed away. We buried her in where they buried her in Beis Lechem. And your brothers, so what, we're all going to come and bow to you? And his father, Rashi tells us, why was his father telling him stop it? Because he saw his brothers were hating his guts. And he wanted to get it that the brothers shouldn't believe this dream because they'll hate him even more. He saw what was going on between the children. And he says, what? Your mother's not even alive. This dream is such silliness. How could this even happen? Now, we know that it will come true. So what is the sun is his father. Who's the moon? The moon is the maidservant Bila, because Bila would take care of him like a mother. So, however, the rabbis say there's no dream that doesn't have. So, also, if it is referring to his mother, there's no dream that doesn't have something fake. Even if it's a true dream, Hashem somehow gives you true dreams. There can also be silly stuff in there. But Yaakov really believed it. We're going to see. But Yaakov was not saying that it was a lie, the dream. He was simply saying that to the brothers that they shouldn't believe the dream because dreams are silliness. And the truth is, it was a real dream, but also we believe, as the Talmud brings down, that some dreams could, even though when they're real, they could have things that are silly inside them too. The bottom line is the brothers were jealous of him, but the Torah, this week's portion it finishes telling us that the father believed it and he guarded it, could not wait for the day to come when the Hashem's realization will be true and Yosef will become a king. And that is the end of today's Chumash. Any questions or comments on the fascinating story that we got interrupted about 2 or 3 times? Sorry, guys, but any questions or comments on today's class? Yes, Mitchell.
Why would Joseph, bring up all these things about his brothers that weren't true?
Good. It's a very good question. I remember in the past, I didn't look it up today. I mean, this is a huge topic. Really, you need to look through the commentaries and so on. It seems like Yosef felt he was doing the right thing. That Yosef thought they were really doing something wrong. And the brothers said, "You're speaking gossip." So Yosef was a special person, I guess. Yosef really was he's sticking up for the other brothers, but he thought that he's doing the right thing by going back to his father and telling his father about the brothers. Ira, you're saying no?
We don't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't.
I hear you.
I don't hear Mitchell either.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think it's your computer, Ira. Everyone else hears me, right? Do you hear me?
That was weird. Okay.
Yep.
Not my computer this time. Not my fault. Okay. So, Ira, maybe you were the guy closing the classes the last few times.
Of course, no doubt.
So I think that in Yosef's mind, he was doing the right thing. Yosef felt that he was telling his father that about what needed to be told to his father. Maybe, I guess, with the brothers especially, it's like, look, the other brothers are being very mean to the other brothers. So he went to let him know about the situation that was going on. So I think that Yosef is a pretty good guy in the story. I think Rashi's explaining that Yosef didn't do enough research. Yosef didn't do enough research in his, maybe he should have done more research. I think that what you see Yosef is staying with the brothers who are being called by the other brothers. You do see Yosef as a big tzaddik because the father, obviously, if Yaakov loves him, Yaakov sees something special in Yosef, which will be true. Yosef will be a very, very special person and overcome tremendous challenges. So Yosef really was an amazing person. I would say, obviously did not realize that he was making a mistake in his passing on the information to his father.
How does Rashi, from that one sentence, extrapolate to say what he was reporting?
No, so Rashi is just, well, that's a good question. So Rashi's not making it up.
It doesn't mention anything. It just says he's reporting it. And then Rashi says what it was.
Correct, because Rashi's bringing down the oral tradition together with it. Rashi's not figuring it out from the words, just saying they brought Dibas Amra, that these, you're right, he doesn't know it from there. Rashi's collecting information from the oral tradition. So Rashi's telling you, the Torah is not telling you what was a negative speech, but Rashi's telling you what it was. But Rashi brings something very interesting. He explains how the punishment will fit the crime, right? He explains how the punishment will fit the crime later on, which is very interesting. So he will figure it out. He actually wants to probably get to how the punishment will fit the crime by knowing what the crime was. So, which is very interesting, Rashi, right? So Rashi knows it from the oral tradition. It's not from the word. He doesn't know it just from the Torah. He knows it from the oral tradition.
But the part of stating that the punishment fits the crime, that's Rashi. That's not.
No, that is the oral. That's not. Rashi doesn't make up most of the stuff. By the way, Rashi mostly collects. He's collecting. You don't know the whole Torah, so he's collecting information to help you explain what's not explained in the Torah. So it doesn't say in the Torah what was the negative speech. Rashi's probably 99% of the stuff of Rashi is collecting from other places. There's a huge argument here, debate here about, because I'll tell you why. We're all upset at Yosef now, but in a few minutes you're going to be very upset at the brothers, because what gives them a right to kill Yosef? They want to kill him. So the real hard time that you're going to have explaining is, how can a brother sell and kill their brothers? How could it be? Which is why today's Rashis are very helpful explaining to you where they're coming from. For example, I'm just showing you offhand. Remember, I gave a class a long time ago, and I looked through the different comments. Remember, I think it was the Or HaChaim commentary says, when there's someone trying to kill you in self-defense, you have a right to kill that person first. Now, if you're in violation of the 7 Noahide laws, the punishment is capital punishment if you're in violation of the 7 Noahide laws. So the brothers felt that their lives were threatened, and they felt Yosef was making up a story to kill them. So the brothers felt they're in self-defense. So that's why it's very helpful today's Chumash to explain tomorrow and the day after's Chumash, where the brothers are going to go and try and kill him and sell him. He deserves that kind of punishment based on understanding what he was making up about them, right? So it's good to know both sides of the story. So Yosef, you have here acting maybe a little too quick in telling his father negative. This is what you have going on. You see both sides of the story. So Yosef feels like he's acting correctly and trying to help his brothers grow, and the brothers feel like Yosef is selling them out and throwing them under the bus, which is why they're going to do whatever they do to him later on. But great question. Thank you, Mitchell. Thank you, Ira. All the questions help us clarify the story. It's very good. Any other questions or comments on today's Chumash? Anybody have anything else they want to share or ask? No? All right. We will move along to today's Tanya and let us